All right, today, guys, we are talking about two things, cloud computing and software as a service. So if you were to come to me and ask me what is cloud computing, the best way that I know to describe it is to kind of give you an example. And when I first started working in technology, I had an internship I think I was a junior in high school. And although cloud computing already existed at this point, it wasn't widely adopted. And if I wanted to use Microsoft Office, for example, I wanted to use Word or PowerPoint or Excel, I had to actually go and buy a disk, and I would open up the box and I would have the disk in there, and I would have a little code that was the license, so that I couldn't just give the disk to someone else and they could use it without that license. And I would have to install that on my computer, and if I wanted an update, they would probably have to send me another disk. And then over time, it got a little bit easier. I could download software online and install it. I could download updates automatically. And that was all pretty cool, but that was still on-premise, which meant that I had to manage it. And from an organizational perspective, when you think about like a bigger company, if you are trying to manage and make sure that everybody has Microsoft Office, for example, everybody has access to some software for 500 employees, you need to buy and install 500 disks onto 500 computers. And every time there's an update, you need to go ahead and update 500 computers. And this is a huge cost, because you can think there's a lot of small and medium-sized businesses who can really benefit from utilizing technology, but don't have sort of the spending power to hire a team of people to really manage a full implementation of all of this software that needs to be managed on premise. And especially as it became more and more popular for businesses to have websites and to do business online, they had to start managing their own servers occasionally. And this is really what led to the economic conditions that made it possible for cloud computing to exist. So we can think of cloud computing as really just the software example of competitive advantage. Now, what that means is basically it's economically a lot more efficient to let a company buy and manage a bunch of different servers and a bunch of different hardware, and then to just rent that hardware. And this is essentially the same service that Salesforce provides you. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to install anything. All you need is a browser and internet access, and you log on using login.salesforce.com, and you have access to everything from anywhere. And this is really, really powerful, because if a company had to actually build this functionality themselves, if they had to maintain servers, if they had to do upgrades each year, it would be a huge cost, and they would need to hire one or multiple people to handle that, depending on the size of their company. So it makes a lot of business sense to kind of outsource all of this to a company like Salesforce and say, okay, Salesforce, you take care of all the servers, you take care of all the software, and we'll just use it. And that's really what led to cloud computing. So if you want to understand cloud computing, looking at a few examples, basically almost everything that you use these days is probably some form of cloud computing. If you use Gmail, that's a cloud server. You're accessing Google's servers to access your email. The same thing goes for Google Drive. The same thing goes for Google Photos. The same thing goes for Apple's iCloud, for example. If you back up your phone, it backs up to the cloud. If you look at Adobe's offering or Microsoft's offering, now you have things like Office 365, which are available online. You have things like Google Docs. You have things like the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, which you can access all of your files from one place in the cloud. And these are all great examples. So this is really what cloud computing is. We've essentially decentralized and taken all of the software off premise, right? So we don't have to handle everything in our offices. We don't have to buy servers. We don't have to worry about maintaining software and updating it. That's all done for us. We usually pay a subscription fee, and we get access logging in from our browser. So that's cloud computing. Now, software as a service is, I've already kind of mentioned, it actually refers to the business model. So software as a service, usually when you pay for a service, you pay for how much you use, or you pay a subscription fee. So think about going to a gym each month. You're going to pay a subscription fee of, let's say, $20 each month, and you have access to the gym. So software as a service works the same way. You pay a subscription fee, and you have access to that software or a certain subset of features within that software. And from there, you can talk about plans and tiers, what have you. But that's essentially what software as a service is. So we've covered a little bit of what cloud computing is. We've covered what software as a service is. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of a foundation for understanding what makes Salesforce unique and what their initial competitive advantage was, providing all of that convenience to their customers by providing software as a service over the internet, as opposed to on-premise having to install it with disks and upgrade it and all of that hassle. So that's all for this one. See you guys in the next one.